Nightjohn, Chapter 5. Come more hard times. A week goes by, then another week. It's time of year for planting, and the field hands have to work until they drop. Waller whips them past that, and they get so tired they don't know up from down. But John works with me, not each night because he's too tired. Some of them to work in the fields can't even walk back, have to be carried by others. But some nights he works with me. I learn a whole family of letters, all the fingers on one hand, two on the other, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. He makes me to write them in the dirt and shows me how to take more than one of them and make a word, how a word is to be looking and how a word is to be sounded. Make it slow, make it sound each time. First the letter, then the sound, then make it to meet the sound from the next letter. Write B, say it, then A, and say it, and then G, bag. I make the word, first word, bag. I make the word, I couldn't believe it. I came to make a word. Doesn't matter what the word is, what it means, just to make a word, the first word. That's what caused the trouble, me and the first word. I was so excited to be making a word. I went everywhere and made the word. I took a big stick and rubbed a point on it against a stone, and round in the back of the quarters I made a word in the dirt. I wrote bag. Then I said it, bag. I rubbed it out with my heel and wrote it in a new place, bag. Wrote it all over, bag, bag, bag. Each time I rubbed it out and moved to a new place, and I was just looking at it last time I wrote it, wondering if I could use other letters to make words, thinking how to make another word when I hear the bull voice of Waller. What are you doing? A big hand grabbed the back of my shirt dress and dragged me up off my feet so I'd be hanging there. Tell me what you're doing. He was ugly. Pale, white maggot ugly, and I could smell his ugliness on him. White ugly. Stink bad of sweat and whiskey and smoke and fat food. I didn't say nothing. He stood me like a dog shaking a rat. I felt my eyes going wobbly, and I just about messed. I didn't say a word. What are you scribbling in the dirt? I thought, I'll lie. Nothing. Something I saw on the old feed sack. I didn't know it was wrong to make it in the dirt. It looks like writing to me. Holds me up closer. Closer. Stink of his breath in my face. White stink. Pig stink. I don't know nothing about writing. He hits me then, beholding me with both hands, one on each shoulder. I'm facing him, and he quick drops one hand and hits me with a fist alongside my head, and I fall. I saw lights, exploding colors. Don't lie to me. You tell me the truth, and I'll let you off. Where did you learn to write? I don't know nothing about writing, I said. I had dropped all the way down and was sitting in the dirt looking up at him, and put me in a bad place, near his feet. Big boots, black boots, but wrong kind of black. Bad black, not a good black like John, Mamy, me. My mind rolled around like a sick dog. He kicked me in the stomach. God damn you, don't lie to me. I'll tie you up to the spring house and get the truth out of you. I don't know nothing about writing. He kicked again, but he missed. First time I grabbed my stomach, rolled away, and on the second kick I ran to get away, ran to the only place I knew, ran to the quarters, ran to Mamy. She'd be in the corner changing the grease and rag on Alice's back, and I ran to her dress and hid my head behind the folds. What? She held my arm. What are you doing? Hiding from him? Who? Waller. But Waller, he owned it all. It wasn't no safe place. He owned all the land, owned the quarters, owned Mamy. He came into the quarters, then he saw me and took me by the arm and held me, but he looked at Mamy. Who's teaching her to read? Sir? Mamy gave him a wide-eyed look, like she don't know nothing since she been born. Waller. He stood looking at her, breathing, breath cut in, cut out like a saw cutting wood. I thought of the word, making the word bag. How could making the word cause all of this? And I hated myself. All right, Waller said, if that's the way you want it, and he grabbed, not me. He made a word, but didn't grab me. He grabbed Mamy by the wrist and dragged her out of the quarters across the dirt to the spring house and shackled her in the chain and bracelets on the wall. Then he left her there, hanging, and went into the house. I had followed them across the spring house, and when he was gone, I went up to Mamy. "He's going to whip you," I said, crying. She sighed, soft sound, and she looked up at the sun and the trees by the White House. Birds sure do sing nice, don't they? They make prettiest sounds. It's all my doings. I pulled at the chains, but they don't give. I be making the word and forget where I was, and he saw me, and now he's going to whip you. Her eyes came on me then. I was crying, but she wasn't. Her eyes came on me, and they were sharp, and her mouth was tight. He would have whipped me anyway some day. Some other reason would have came along. He loves to use the whip. John, I thought of him. John will stop him. She shook her head. He can't. No matter what he says, he won't stop Waller from whipping me. Now you go along and bring me some water when they ain't watching. He won't whip me until close on dark when everybody's back from the field to watch. The sun is hot and I be getting a big thirst. Don't I get some water? I snuck Mamy water through the afternoon and she hung there. Way the chains and bracelets were, she couldn't reach down to sit, so she had to stand. But standing through the day that way without moving is hard. After it passed some long time, her legs didn't do so good, and she sagged. And come late in the day, she was mostly hanging on the chains. Her arms were up, and she was having to hurt. I stood and watched for a spell and cried some, but she stopped me. You take care of the young ones. Go now. They'll be dirty and stinking. If you don't change the rags on them, you run along. I be fine. It took forever waiting on the day, Mamy hanging that way. I thought once of running into the fields to tell John. Wouldn't do no good. Driver working in the fields, he see me coming. He just put me to work. He say if you can walk the fields, you can work. So I be working and not here, and John couldn't do anything anyway. They just keep him there no matter what I say. So nothing. Waller, he keep his white maggot own self in the White House all day. Don't come out but once to see me standing by Mamy. The sun works across the sky cooking her. I brought her water again and a piece of cornbread. I'd been saving since this morning's food, but she shook her head. I'll just throw it up when he comes to whipping me. You go on now. Get the rags ready for my back and the salt. I can't. Yes, you can. Go do it. Finally, it came on to the dark, and the hands come in from the field. Part of the afternoon, I had the young ones to make a trough of cold food so they had enough to eat. They had to walk past the spring house, and they saw Mamy, but there wasn't nothing they could do. I went up to John, and I told him what had happened. Damn, he shook his head. I should have warned you about making words. I knew I was just too excited to make my first word. I got to writing it in the dirt, and he caught me. Waller caught me. He's going to whip her. Mamy, going to whip her to rags. John didn't say anything. He looked to where Mamy hung on the spring house, and his eyes went flat. Bastard. I was going to say more, but I was going to say more. Say, can you stop it? Say, can you do something? But I heard the door on the White House open, and Waller came out. He made gas and spit like he just ate a big meal and walked across the yard. Stopped. All of you get out here and watch, he bellowed like an old bull. Then he turned. Don't go to the spring house. Didn't go to the spring house, didn't have a whip. Instead, he went to the barn and went inside. Come out in a breath or two, and he was carrying a horse harness. He went to the buggy by the carriage shed and hooked the harness like he had a horse in it, except it was empty. Then he went back to the spring house and looked at Mamy. You go and tell me who's teaching them to read? Mamy been hanging, but she stood now and gave him a big eye again. I don't know nothing about reading or writing. God damn you. He hit her with his fist. Then he unhooked her from the chains and ripped her clothes off her body and dragged her naked to the harness. Put it on. I feel like a ride in the buggy. Mamy put the collar around her neck with the lines going back to the buggy. Stood there, looking up at the sky. I couldn't keep my eyes down, but the men did. They didn't look at her, looked at the ground. Waller climbed into the buggy and sat in the seat. He reached under the footboard and came up with a whip. Pull, damn you. The whip snaked out from the buggy seat like it was alive and flicked, and blood came out of Mamy's shoulder. A big cut. She startled, pulling it, but it wasn't good enough. She strained and heaved, and the wagon It moved, and Waller kept saying, "Faster, damn it, faster." The whip snaked out from the buggy seat like it was alive and flicked, and blood came on Mammy's shoulders. A big cut. She started pulling, and it wasn't good enough. She strained and heaved, and the wagon moved, but Waller kept saying, "Faster, damn it, faster." And the whip come again and again, blood running down her back, the buggy moving across the yard, and I here in the back of me. She didn't know nothing. It was me. I taught the girl the letters. I turned, and John was standing there. He had stepped forward, and he pointed to Mammy. "Let her be. She didn't know nothing about it. It was all me." Waller looked at him, the way a cat looks at a mouse caught in a corner. He smiled, ugly smile. "Well, I might have guessed." He stepped down from the buggy and moved to John. "Why don't you just go over there and put yourself in those irons on the springhouse wall?" I thought John wasn't going to do it. He held for 2 blinks of my eyes. Waller had the whip in his left hand, coiled but ready. His right hand was on the butt of the big pistol in his belt. 2 blinks, then John moved. He walked to the springhouse and put the bracelets on. He wasn't wearing a shirt, and when he turned his back, the sun caught the scars from the old whippings, rippled and rigid. There's nowhere for the whip to hit, I thought. Can't hit nothing new. No new meat. Stupid, the way my thinking worked. But Waller, he wasn't set for whipping. He made one of the field hands to fetch the stump used for chopping the heads off of chickens, sent another hand to the blacksmith lean-to for a wide chisel and a hammer. Then he turned to us, all standing, watching. I had moved to Mammy, but she shook her head and stood. It was wrong to learn to read. Waller's voice loud, bouncing off the buildings. "It is against the law for you to read. To know letters, to know any counting is wrong. Punishment, according to the law, is removal of an extremity. We don't know all the words, never heard extremity before, but we don't need to know." Waller had 2 field hands hold one of John's feet on the block. He put the chisel in the middle of his toe and swung the hammer. Thunk! The toe came off clean, jumped away from the chisel, and fell in the dirt, blood squirting out all over the block. John, he jerked his foot so hard it knocked one of the field hands over, but quiet, not even a grunt out of him. He didn't look down either. He just kept staring off into the fields next to the springhouse. "Other foot," Waller spit and wiped his chisel off the stump. The 2 field hands grabbed John's left leg, the one next to the wall of the springhouse. "His name is Robe. He take it slow. Doesn't move fast, so you could see it was bothering him." And Waller snaps like a breaking stick. "It can be your toe too. It doesn't cost more to cut another one off." So Robe puts John's foot up there, and Waller puts the chisel on it. Thunk! This time it was not so clean. The foot jerks back, and the toe is caught by some skin, and the chisel missed. "Hold it up. Damn it." They hold the foot to the block. John, he is still not making any sounds, but his face is stiff, like it's carved out of rock, and there's sweat pouring off of his forehead, his neck, and down to his chest. He's soaked. Waller cuts the last bit of skin. "There, that'll teach you to mess with things you shouldn't. Get a rag and get some grease on that." He walked back to the White House without looking back, and as soon as he was away from us, we went to helping. The 2 hands carried John between them to the quarters, and I went to Mammy. "Fetch the salt," she told me. "Get it in these cuts, and 'fore I pass out, for God's sakes, cover me with something so I ain't naked before the Lord." So I did, and she swooned some with the pain and went down, and I frotched her dress and helped to put it on her, and then helped her back to the quarters because her legs didn't work right from hanging and standing all day. All the time I'm thinking, be a good hell with fire and brimstone and devils cutting skin off the backs like Mammy says. Be a good goddamn hell with demons eating you, pulling your guts out. Be the worst hell there is to be, and put Waller in it.